Yes.
Mm,
I don't-
Working on it. I'm letting Commissioner Dykes in right now.
Okay. Wait till we get all the commissioners in.
Okay. Commissioner Dykes should be in.
So, Commissioner Boughton, we're gonna mix this up a little bit. We're gonna go to some of the underlying departments first to find out what they plan on doing, and then come to you last to see what your position is relative to this. So we're gonna start with, is Commissioner Giuliani on yet?
I saw her. Yeah.
Commissioner Giuliani, Department of Public Health, could you please tell us how much money you're getting in under the federal infrastructure and an outline of what you're looking at to do with those dollars?
Yes, sure. So we are receiving about $150 million. And the way that the money has been outlined for our use is that we have certain accounts like the drinking water state revolving fund, the loan plan that we have with different water programs that can apply to us for that funding. There will be additional monies that will go there. There's a supplemental funding for that line item that we are receiving monies for. Then there is money specifically for lead lines, replacement of lead lines. Another specific line for PFAS remediation. Another specific line for schools and childcare centers. And that is the general gist. And so what—
I have a couple of specific questions on what you have outlined for us. So you said that you're getting $150 million. Is that $150 million over 5 years? Is that $150 million in 1 year? How is that?
Over 5 years.
Okay, so it's $150 million over 5 years. And you have I'm sure everybody on this call is very familiar with your revolving loan program relative to drinking water. Are you saying that some of this money will go into the loan program and be loaned out, or is this all grant dollars?
So it is all, so there, if we look at it, there is some that is going to be part of the loan fund.
So stop right there. I just want to understand, we're getting federal dollars in. Are you saying that the federal dollars that we're getting in are going to be loaned out under the Clean Water Drinking Act?
So the part that would be specific in the revolving loan fund, yes. And I'll ask Lori to confirm that nothing I'm saying is incorrect. There are other parts that are going to be grant dollars.
So of the $150 million, if we get it over 5 years, it's slightly more than $25 million a year. We're at $30 million a year, give or take, correct?
Correct.
So $30 million a year. That will, I just don't know why any of it would go into the loan program. I guess that, Lori, maybe am I missing something? Why would we put,
I think that? Yeah, before I give it to Lori, I don't really think we have a choice. That's just the way that it's been written and that the federal government is allocating it to us. So that's part of the challenge that we have, is it's very specified how they're giving us the money.
So they're giving us money to loan out. They're not giving us grant dollars.
Lori, we have some of it that is grant dollars, correct?
Correct, Commissioner. With all these different pots, there's different rules. All of this money is
Right.
programmed money that comes through the SRF program, as Commissioner described. The drinking water SRF has been around for 25 years. That money is coming through as loans through our program under Commissioner Giuliani's, under our department. And there are subsidization. Some of these loans are subsidized, and there's different rules for different line items. And there is no EPA guidance right now. All we know is what's in the federal law. There's going to be an implementation memo coming out next week. I was just on a call 2 minutes ago to better describe all of this. There's information that will be rolling out over the next few weeks, but it's very clear. This money is coming into the SRF program and is going to be programmed as loans.
Lori,
but
when
with
you
some
say,
subsidy.
So when you say SRF, so just everybody knows what SRF stands for, because we have the public listening in to our conversation here.
Sure.
I'm sorry. So
State
SRF,
revolving fund, right? State revolving fund.
Correct.
thank you, Commissioner. This fund is getting $30 million in the fund in addition to the normal dollar amounts we get from the federal government, correct?
So that 30 million, some of it might be for some of those other grant programs. That's sort of all of it, right? So some of it is going to the loan part, but then there are some that are going specifically for the lead line removal or PFAS or schools and childcare, all those different lines that I offered you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I get that. I got that part. I really do.
Okay.
I'm trying to drill down into the one question I have. Are the dollars that we're getting from the federal government part of a loan program, which means they're not grant dollars? So that 30 million, is there a component of that that is a loan, not a grant? That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yes.
Very simple. And what is that dollar amount that is loan, not grant?
I need to pull up the exact, to be able to tell you the exact dollar amount.
Thank you.
Lori, do you have it in front of you? I've got.
Well, maybe this will explain it. All the money that is going to be sent out to the eligible public water systems goes out through our department as a loan. The loans can be subsidized under certain, as the commissioner broke out the different line items, there's the capitalization-based grant. There's a capitalization-based grant. When we use the word grant, we have to, as a department, we apply to EPA for the grant. There's an application process with a lot of rules and regulations and different things. So we have the base capitalization amount, which is 146 million over 5 years. There's the supplemental piece, as the commissioner had mentioned. Then there's lead service lines, and then there's emerging contaminants. And those pots all have different EPA requirements. They are all loans, but they are different subsidization amounts for those loans.
And by subsidization, you mean that there's a different component of that that is a grant?
If you are asking for $10 million to remove lead service lines, you take a loan for $10 million, we may subsidize it at a certain percentage. And that's how it works today as well.
And by subsidization, you mean forgiven, so
Correct.
it doesn't have to
Correct.
be paid back?
Correct. Absolutely.
I just want to make sure we're all talking the same language here, because we're all using different pieces of language. Well, there's a number of questions for you right now. Representative Walker, followed by Senator Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. First, I want to ask, how much of these dollars are matching requirements? None of your dollars that you're getting out of the infrastructure grant are matched, are required state matching. None of them?
No, that's incorrect. I'm sorry, that's not correct. There is a matching requirement.
Okay.
And sorry, I'm trying to find the original document you were looking for the first line item.
Okay.
I don't have enough screens to be doing this at once. So Lori, I'm just looking for that document to be able to give the first line item, but there is a required match. There's no opportunity for additional application for this, but there is a required match.
Yeah, there's a state required match for that.
Correct.
Correct. And do you know of the 150, how much of that is a matching requirement? Is it 50%? Is it 25%? I just want a rough estimate if I have to.
Yeah, I can get you all these numbers.
Okay, then let me go to this. You said drinking water, not clean water, drinking water, correct?
Everything for DPH is drinking water.
Okay, good. Okay, so are you using a specific formulaic approach in addressing that process?
So that process is all laid out for us by EPA.
So it's a formulaic process. Okay. I just wanted to see that. And I'm trying to stick to 2 questions, so I'm hoping that you're going to be able to tell me how much we have to match on this.
Okay, so that's if,
local leaders also.
I'm sorry, is that somebody else asking me a question or?
No, somebody
Okay.
just didn't mute themselves.
Okay, so in the, summary that we gave you, we show you the amount that we're getting for each year and then the 5-year totals. So I think you see that, correct?
Okay,
Now-
I didn't, you submitted us testimony?
Yes, we submitted testimony.
Okay, I did not get, I will pull that up.
Okay, now in
But-
terms of,
Of
and that
matching.
has certain numbers that you're asking for. Now, in terms of the other numbers, what I'm looking for is I have a spreadsheet which shows the exact amounts for each of those years and the required match. And I will get it for you. I know I had it here. Okay, hold on. Now I have the right one, I believe. No.
We can
Lori,
go on-
I don't know if you have it in front of you or not.
Yes, Commissioner, I have the overall numbers for over 5 years.
Yes,
So for the entire bill that's coming to DPH for safe drinking water is 48.5 million, the entire 5-year. And as Commissioner Jatani mentioned, there is a spreadsheet that shows the details.
Of the matching amount?
Yes, that breaks it out. It's different percentages depending, it gets complicated, right? Because there's different line items. So there's
Okay.
different percentages based upon those, but for overall, for 5 years, required match, total match funding required is 48.5 million.
right. And
Okay.
just to highlight that a little bit more, because I'm sorry, I found exactly what I'm looking for. In terms of the required match, for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund base capitalization grant, the required match is 29.3 million. And for the supplemental is 19.2 million. Therefore, as Lori said, it's 48.5 million required match over 5 years.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Walker. Up next is Senator Minor, followed by Representative Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with regard to the loan versus grant discussion that you had having to do with the water grants, is that a predetermined process such as the clean water funds? If you borrow a certain amount of money, you get a certain amount of grant, or are those on a case-by-case basis?
So would it be possible for me to screen share? Is that possible for me to do? Would you like that to see the different line items? The only reason I say that is because this is very much pre-programmed. There are some that are loans, and then if you live in a certain community, you can get up to 40% of subsidy, things like that. And then certain things are just straight grants. Okay, so if you would like me to share, I can do that. It's up to you.
No, I think that at least gives me enough for this conversation today. So I can go back and look at the information that you said you sent into the committee.
The slide that I do have is more detailed than that, which we are happy to provide to you if you'd like.
That would be helpful if you would do that, please.
And if Senator Austin, if you want me to screen share, you just let me know.
And
I'm hesitant to get involved in the screen sharing mechanism right now.
No problem.
So Senator Minor, go ahead and continue.
thank you. And my second question is there any portion of this federal grant which is left open to the agency or the administration in determining how it's used?
Not really. So we have very specific, as I said, line items as have been outlined, and it's very specifically programmed by EPA in terms of how it should be used for those various line items.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All of which, I mean, just to reiterate, all of which we currently do, all of which are the types of programs we currently do. It's just additional monies being put to the various different programs.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Senator Minor. Up next is Representative Nolan, followed by Representative Dillon.
Yeah, my question was just answered in regards to what the commissioner said. And I was going to also ask about the percentage that she said she has the screen for, but I will look into that document because I didn't look at it yet. So thank you very much, Commissioner.
And I'll make sure we send this one slide that has all the specific lines of funding and the amount and then the match.
Thank you. That would help a great deal.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Nolan. Representative Dillon, followed by Senator McCrory.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
I'm recalling the testimony that you filed. I saw a line item for PFAS. And I guess I wanted to know, because you responded to questions today by saying that much of this is predetermined. Is every state getting dollars for PFAS, or do these different allocations, some of which we're already doing, were they chosen by the state from a menu of possible options? Or is everybody in every state in the country getting PFAS, for example?
So I'm going to answer, and then I'm going to let Lori clarify if I say anything incorrectly. So the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, as we always get it, the basic grant, people can apply to it for a variety of different things, and they might be assessed by the state. However, this particular round with this new funding, there is a specific line item for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund with a caveat: emerging contaminants with focus on PFAS. And we're getting specifically $39,540,000 over the 5 years for that specific addressing that we have to do. So applications that come through that address that specifically could be funded by that line item. Do you have anything to add to that, Lori? Is there anything I said incorrectly?
No, that's perfect. And just to follow along with Representative Dillon, your question about is every state getting the same? Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
And this money across the country, the billions of dollars, is programmed by EPA based upon our needs survey. There's a long story here, and the SRFs are complicated, but we're a 1% state, so we get 1% of all of the allotment that EPA has. So every state has this programmed funding under EPA, and EPA has all of these rules and regulations under their program that we must follow.
Okay, and Madam Chair, just to make sure I understand your response, some of this we're doing already, but I guess I was interested in the emerging contaminants specifically because I wanted to know if we had applied for that or whether it had been offered by the federal government without our necessarily saying that we have a need, which we do have, I say, but I'm trying to understand the process. Thank you.
Yes.
Did I state it accurately?
I believe it. So the way you stated it is accurate, that, there is a state revolving fund. People could apply to it for a variety of things that they want to do on a regular basis. However, we didn't apply something specific related to PFAS. They are giving this to us and saying, use this line item to address emerging contaminants, including PFAS.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Dillon. Up next, Senator McCrory, followed by Senator Omar.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how you doing, Commissioner?
How you doing?
I'm great. I'm sorry I came on kind of late because I got 2 or 3 different meetings coming on, and I was trying to pay attention to what's going on so I can understand what's happening, what I've learned so far. And I'm sorry, guys, who have been on the call already from the beginning. But I'm hearing there's $150 million over 5 years coming down from the feds to the state of Connecticut in regards to a clean water drinking act. Is that what I'm hearing?
So the bipartisan infrastructure law is going to specifically give DPH a certain amount of money to deal with drinking water. So
Right.
water that comes into the house that people consume and drink, that's what
Right.
DPH monitors, because that's health and safety. That's,
So,
people. Yeah, so
So-
that's the part.
So what's the plan? The money comes in and do what? Municipalities say, hey, can I get this money to do this in my community, or do individual people, do corporations, do nonprofits? How does the process work? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. So I'm going to, again, have Lori clarify if I say anything wrong, 725 eligible water systems so the water systems apply for this.
Water
And the
system.
Correct.
And
And so
it's 725 water systems in Connecticut.
eligible water systems.
Go ahead. Keep going. And they apply. Okay.
They apply with specific programs in mind. So there could be things that would be normally in the drinking water state revolving fund, things, aging infrastructure, they need to change this out, change that out. That would be one type of thing. But because we're getting specific line itemed monies for lead service lines, for PFAS, for schools, for childcare, they can apply, and we can, put those monies towards those line items, as opposed to the routine state revolving fund line item where, we have a good amount of money usually, but because we have these specific things, we have specific projects that will be evaluated for those specific things. So for example, lead service lines, all the water systems need to start their inventory right now so that they know what they've got in terms of lead service lines. And then they are giving us that information. And then we're going to be looking at what are the high social vulnerability index towns who could really benefit from this type of intervention, and address it to those towns where lead service line removal is going to be really important.
Got you.
We already have information, let's say, for example, from New London, from New Haven, from Norwich. They've already, gotten on it because they know that they have a problem.
So my last question, and you explained it very well, makes much more sense. Do the individual municipalities do the work, or do these water companies do the work, or are individual people do the work that needs to be done for the infrastructure change? Yeah, that's my question. How does that work?
Largely, it's going to be the water systems. Largely, it is the water systems. Now, for having said that, if there is a lead service line, this is nuanced a little bit, but there's a part that's public up to a certain point. Then there's a part that goes to the house that's private. It's an individual homeowner's responsibility, right? So but what we're really talking about is the public part, and it's the water systems.
Thank you very much. You explained it very well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McCrory. Senator Anwar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. I wanted to ask you some clarifying questions from a real scenario. So I am honored to represent the town of East Windsor. There's a neighborhood with 87 homes where there are, because some of these areas were old tobacco fields, there are pesticides, and we have EVs and their local private wells, which are supplying water to some 87 homes, are essentially of not safe capacity right now. And they are in the process of looking at what it would cost for them to be able to connect with public water supply. The cost is quite significant. The town is willing to put some money, but I think the community themselves may not be able to afford it. This is not yet PFAS, and we will have a potential to look at SRF at this point. But because we have not looked for PFAS, we feel PFAS would be there. Do we need to prove PFAS is there to be able to access the PFAS funds to help reduce the burden on the municipality and the community?
Lori, can you shed some light on the best way to address this?
Yes, Commissioner, thank you. A great question, Senator Anwar. And sorry, my battery's running low. I hope my computer doesn't run out of power while I talk quickly. I've been in East Windsor. What they need to do is apply. They need to talk to us specifically about those projects. We know that affordability is a problem. We can talk about the subsidization that is offered under these loans to help. Yes, PFAS, in order to capture the PFAS money, you have to have PFAS in the water, right? So that is a must do. And I'm going to go find my plug-in cord before I lose power. I'm sorry.
I think, my take on it, Senator Anwar, is that for the PFAS line, you need PFAS. That it does need to be documented. That doesn't mean you can't apply anyway. And again, some of this nuance, I would have to defer to DPH staff to be able to figure out the best way to support. But I do think that being able to justify and show the need and the inability of the town to basically support this is going to be able to allow for greater subsidization potentially. So I think that's the piece that we're going to have to work with DPH staff who know the ins and outs of this best.
Perfect. This is very, very helpful. Truly appreciate your help, Commissioner Giuttani and your team. And Lori, you will receive some information within the next hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Anwar. Representative Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, Commissioner, you talked about when you answered Senator McCrory, you talked about the lines between the frontage of the house versus the city responsibility. Does the lines for the homeowner are they to get some assistance through the water company, or do they have to go through some other ways or means to get assistance? Because sometimes I know I've seen the water company doing some fixing and it affects the area between the curtilage of the street and the home. And then now the homeowner has $4,000 worth of work that they need to get done because of some of the mishaps that happen. So could you be a little more specific for us on that?
Yeah, so Lori, can you help us navigate exactly what happens when that type of scenario happens, or, the private part?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. An excellent question, Representative Nolan. So the funding, the line item funding that the Commissioner mentioned that is coming our way through our SRF program, that we will program as a loan to a water company who's eligible, is to remove the entire lead service line. We cannot do partial lead service line removals with this money, because as we've seen, partial lead service lines cause lead exceedances in big systems like Providence, like Pittsburgh, and other areas. So this money has to be programmed in to remove the entire service line. We know that causes in different cities, the different companies cannot pay for the entire removal. I know that is a question I got today by a number of municipal systems. So that is something that has to be worked out, water utility by water utility. But if they want the funding through our SRF program, that money is to remove the entire line.
Thank you. That is very helpful information for people to hear, because there has been a lot of incidents where the responsibility ends up falling on the homeowner, and then it becomes very difficult for them to handle it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Nolan. Senator Martin, I'm going to ask a quick question. Laura, you talked about 1%, and I have to say that Commissioner Giuttani is very lucky to have someone like you who has so much experience with the water systems in Connecticut. You're a wealth of knowledge. But the 1% that we talk about, how is that calculated around the country, and do they take into account the number of old systems? So like Connecticut is an older state with older infrastructure, but often we're told, Commissioner Gilletti, you got to mute yourself, sir. The older systems are more expensive to repair, and it's just not something that I think that people are really understanding. Does the federal government take into account the fact that we have older systems?
Yes, and I can get you further information on it's a needs survey that is done as a program under EPA every 4 years. We just went through a needs survey, the last round. It shows we work with the utilities, they do a survey, they do a model, they program it in. Our largest city is 140,000 people. You can't compete with Massachusetts and Boston. Boston gets 2.5%. We get 1%. We've tried really hard to work with our utilities on these needs surveys. It's hard. We're close to almost going above 1%, but it's based upon a formula that EPA and a model that EPA puts out, and it's done every 4 years. We actually just finished it, and we hope to get above 1%. So we work really hard on that particular item, but I could get you more detail. There's a lot to that survey.
That would be great. And while you have to fix a whole water line, does that mean that if the municipality or the water system is getting a loan on that they can't claw back or attach a homeowner for a component of that?
The intent is to pay for the entire removal.
Correct. But
The
if
intent
it's a
is to pay
loan,
for that. Yes, it's a loan and the utility has to pay that back.
Can they go back to the homeowner to get their portion of that loan?
I suppose that they could try, yes.
Okay, I just
So I can
want
get back
people
to you on details on that, but this is yet to really be worked out. The national guidance is just yet to come out. So that's why I hesitate a bit. There's a lot of, as Commissioner noted, like this is all just came out in November. The national EPA guidance is due to come out starting next week. So there'll be a lot more that we know about the details here and again, everything is programmed by EPA. We have to follow all of their rules, which is extensive.
Correct. And Senator Minor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to go back to what I think the answer was, no state discretion. And the purpose of this opportunity to communicate with anybody that wants to communicate on the bill that's been proposed. Are you saying that, as you understand it today, there is no ability for the legislature to offer an opinion that more money in one category or another should be emphasized for the state of Connecticut?
So I would offer.
So if we decide that we hear you and we appreciate your expertise and we understand the needs are many, but rather than put $5.8 million in that water line fund, the legislature believes, given the needs, we would rather see 8.9 million put into that fund, tracking the same grant loan requirements of the federal government. That is not possible or is possible?
My understanding is that will not be possible, that we have been allocated monies per each line as dictated by the federal government.
And in the soon to be received information, if that were to change, how would that communication get to the Appropriations Committee?
We could certainly let you know if Lori gets communication from EPA that there is any flexibility there.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because that was kind of the reason for us all kind of getting together today. Thank you.
Yes, understood.
So relative to Senator Minor's question, I have a similar question, but not exactly the same. So even if it was the dollar amount that you were going to put into, the dollar amounts remain the same. The legislature may have different priorities relative to the specific projects that come in underneath that dollar amount. And that is a question that I have, because we may not agree that all of the money should go into one water system in East Koshkosh, wherever that water system may be. And we might want to weigh in on seeing an equal distribution around the state on water systems. And that's something that I think is one of the main questions we have. You have a list of projects. We may want to weigh in on what that list of projects is comprised of. That's something I just want to put on your radar. And no matter what we end up doing with this bill or not, I can guarantee that there will be regular reporting required by this legislature on projects that are going on, because we are not convinced that we have enough information to just assume that the federal government is saying all the money has to be spent in just this one way. This has been an ongoing problem, and when I look at national debates, there are many states around this country that are having this exact same discussion with their exact same people and saying, we need to understand better where you're putting the dollars. And we want to make sure that, water systems, you happen to be involved in the water systems, are something that we all want to find out how this is being ascertained and where the dollars are going. And so that's something that we are very much interested in looking at. Senator, Representative.
If I can just make one comment on that, the only thing I want to say is that currently the way the system is set up, if there are 12 programs that are planned to be funded, as the DPH staff goes through applications, as they go through things, there's always an intended use plan. There's always a public comment period. There's always, but we can't just say we're going to do it to this one system and we're doing it and that's it. There is always public comment. There is always intended use plan that has to be approved. So that would still remain regardless of what additional things may be put in place.
In all due respect, public comment period, Commissioner, that we are, all of us are part of the public, but we also have a part of the public that calls us regularly. And for us to make written comment to a public comment application process is not something that we're interested in doing. We want to have direct knowledge so we can make sure our constituents know what's going on. Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to sort of go a little further in this conversation, because part of the reason why I asked how much of this has to be matched, to Senator Minor's concern, that money has to come through the general fund. So as we all know, that is something that we as a legislature have to approve. So as we go through this and we talk to different agencies, we're going to find out that this money has to be matched. And therefore, it puts us in the middle of the conversation, not to the back or to the side, but in the middle of the conversation. I do agree that there are some basic principles that they have in each one of these categories, but the categories also have the flexibility to be altered. In the public health, there are several other entities that I think may, and I don't have all of them because I did do a little bit of research on some of them, but there are some more categories that are being proposed in the document that we have the right to ask and actually look at. So I think we have a lot more invested in this than probably many people understand. I know that I've talked to some people in Washington about it over the last few hours. And then we also know that several states are doing the exact same thing that we are doing right now, which is maybe some of them like New Hampshire, Mississippi, Indiana, a few of them out there are looking at it, and they're the ones that have been reviewing all of this. So I say that this is an exercise for all of us to do. And it's an exercise for us to come up with a compromise where we all work together for the good of the state of Connecticut. So I look forward to talking with everybody about their testimony, but do understand that as legislators, we have a major vested interest in this. And if we want to, we can change those formulas. We can change the way our statute talks about federal funds, because it is only in Connecticut. It is not something that is coming from Washington. It is something that is coming from Connecticut. So we need to all understand that. And I look forward to that conversation. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And both Representative Walker and I have been looking into this. There are far more states than not that are making sure that the legislature has something to say about the dollars that are coming in. And we want to make sure that we're in the middle of that discussion to make sure that we are providing the correct resources and that we, that we have a say. So thank you very much for coming today. Up next, we have Commissioner Dykes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Commissioner. How are you?
Terrific. Great to see you.
Nice to see you too. If we could start off with the basics, how much money are you getting in total and over how many years?
Well, I guess it depends on which types of programs we're talking about. I mean, currently we're tracking roughly 95 different programs under the federal infrastructure bill that have relevance to our, various, as you know, the diverse kind of programmatic mission that DEEP has the privilege to deliver on. So whether we're talking about, clean school buses to broadband to electric transmission, it's a pretty broad scope. I'll say that a significant share of the dollars that are associated with, or the opportunities that we see across those various programs, are being distributed through competitive programs. And so, and so many of these are programs that have been authorized for the very first time. So we're very actively, tracking a lot of the federal guidance and RFIs and FOAs and so on and so forth being developed. So that's a big answer to your question, but this is a big kind of opportunity, and it's hard to nail it down to exactly the dollar amount for those reasons.
Most of the programs you just talked about were in the electric side of things, the energy side of things. And you have a very big agency, as all of us are aware of. Many of us wanted to break it back up because we think it might be too big. That being said, there is direct dollars coming on relative to some of the basic programs you have, like the Clean Water Fund. And so those sewer lines in many cases are 100 years old in some municipalities.
You bet.
And so, and generally, interestingly enough, the Clean Water Fund can be a grant, which I think is quite interesting when water coming from the other side is not considered a grant, but water going out the other side is considered a grant. But the money that you're getting, and these are questions that we are going to want very detailed answers. We want to know how much money is coming in that's not a competitive grant out of your agency to the federal government. What are the dollars that you're getting relative to the infrastructure that is not competitive across the states? What are you getting in on a standard payment into the state over the next 5 years? Like, how much are you getting in on the Clean Water Fund? Is that a competitive grant? You're muted, Commissioner.
All right, why don't we start? Yeah, Clean Water Fund is a great place to start because that's a little more straightforward. That is an existing program. And so we are anticipating about $40 million of increase in the appropriation and the authorization for the Clean Water Fund through the 5 fiscal years of the infrastructure bill. So
40 million, I'm sorry, Commissioner, is that 40 million a year? Or
so
is that 40 million?
I know we have as I switch to my spreadsheet here, let me invite Graham Stevens, in the interest of time, our Bureau Chief for Water Protection and Land Reuse. Graham, do you want to walk through the numbers for the fiscal years?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Hello, Senator.
Hi,
To
how
answer your
are you?
question, I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good.
So, good. Well, let's talk about clean water.
Let's do that.
So, obviously a significant need. I heard some of the comments, with DPH with respect to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. DEP manages the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which receives base funding from EPA as a grant. That capitalization grant is then used with state bonding dollars, both GO, general obligation, and revenue bonds, and we provide grants and loans. It's not all grants; it's a percent grant and a percent loan for projects based on both the federal rules and the state statutes and regulations that govern the use of the Clean Water Fund. And what we are seeing, and we're very pleased about this, over the next 5 years of the bipartisan infrastructure law is $136.6 million coming to Connecticut by formula. So DPH spoke of their percentage that they get. It's different with respect to the clean water side of the table. We get 1.2% of the overall pot of money from the federal government. And as great as those dollars sound, I just wanted to commend our legislative partners for the great support through the years with respect to our state funding, because we have significant needs, significantly historical and some historic infrastructure that needs to be updated, particularly in our most urban communities where combined sewer overflows result in the discharge of untreated sewage to our watercourses, which poses a public health, it's a public health crisis, right? So every time it rains significantly, you can, if there's not proper backflow preventers on residential properties, the sewage can back up into people's homes. And also, we've designed this infrastructure to have a release valve of raw sewage during these events. So a lot of our money, goes to trying to undo the problems of the past with respect to this infrastructure, which is really, I love transportation and bridges and trains. We have an infrastructure crisis as it relates to clean water, and that's an unseen problem for many, but not for the folks who deal with these combined sewer overflow issues or just stormwater issues and sewage issues in general. So we're very excited about that $136 million over the next 5 years. We have a similar process to DPH, where we are required by federal rules to send out a call for projects, which we have done to all of our municipal partners, because obviously that they're the ones who own the infrastructure. And we're trying to ensure that we will have a priority list ready when these funds do come to Connecticut, so that we can get construction underway on new projects to address, combined sewer overflow, to address needs for new wastewater treatment plant upgrades, to address, infrastructure and treatment that causes problems with respect to our water courses in the Long Island Sound, which is a cherished resource for Connecticut. That's just a general intro. I don't know if there's anything else specific, Senator, on the Clean Water Fund that you or others had questions on.
So Graham, I actually believe in infrastructure repairs and renovations. And again, the same questions that we were asking the DPH commissioner, and the same, concerns that Representative Walker and Senator Minor brought up. The legislature is going to be involved in this. In one fashion or another, we're going to be involved in this, and there are going to be a lot of questions, and people are going to have a lot of questions because they need to understand it, and they need to explain to their constituents what's going on. I fully agree with you that we need to do a lot more with our water infrastructure and our sewer infrastructure. I think we absolutely have to do that. That is primary in urban communities, and it's primary in rural communities when we're making rural communities be responsible for continued affordable housing. If we don't have water and sewer systems, we cannot have some of the things people are asking for. So I am very much in favor of this, but I do think it's fair for us to ask the questions. And that's exactly what we're doing here today, and we will continue to do them. And we are going to have a bill that will figure out how we're going to get these answers so that we can stay on top of it. And it may be new to everybody that we are going to have this, and it may put some additional face-to-face conversations between legislators and executive branch people. But I think that this is vitally important for people to understand. And I'm glad people are interested in this stuff because I think it's important. We have a lot of people that have questions. Senator Minor, followed by Representative Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner. I'm not sure, but did you send in any information about how many pots of dollars are available to the agency and in which categories?
We did participate in a briefing for legislative leadership, where we gave I think an overview of some of the infrastructure bill priorities that we have been tracking, but I don't believe we have responded to requests for inventorying those specific programs. But if there's interest, we're happy to do that.
Sure. So as of today, I'd like to make that my formal request. I would like to have by category a detailed list of what the pots of money look like that will be coming to the agency from the federal government, and any and all flexibility that there might be built into those. I don't know if you were on watching the prior back and forth, but my curiosity is around the areas of this federal grant that is possibly influenced by the legislature rather than prescriptively driven by the federal government.
Thank you. I think that happy to provide that kind of thing. To the extent as I understand, your request is about federal funds that could be coming to our agency, and I'm happy to be responsive to that request. And listen, to the spirit of this whole hearing, right? I think there's enormous excitement across all of government about the opportunity that these dollars present. It's a historic amount of funding coming to advance infrastructure priorities at a time when we have a lot of aged infrastructure and a lot of new, challenges like PFAS and climate resilience that we desperately need funding to address. And I think that at the agency level, or at least I know that in working with many of our sister agencies and commissioners, we want to maximize everyone here in the administration wants to maximize the opportunities to get those dollars from the federal government into Connecticut. And I think we have what I've observed from the federal agencies is that they're working very hard at breakneck speed to launch programs. We're trying to be responsive to RFIs and RFQs and funding opportunities and public meetings and dialogues and all kinds of stuff, because there's lots of federal agencies that are eager to get input as they're designing the rules for these programs so they can put dollars on the street quickly. So that's one thing we're working hard to stay plugged into those things and make sure that programs are getting designed in a way that we can access. I'll also say, in addition to the amazing, energy and commitment that this committee and other committees are putting towards ensuring that the legislators' priorities are being met, and the priorities of the state are being met, and how these dollars are coming to the state. We also have many municipalities that, in many cases, will be the eligible applicants for many of these programs. And so we're thinking hard about, the priorities that we're hearing from municipal leaders from COGS and others, and what to the extent to which DEEP can provide technical assistance and support to municipalities so that they can get plugged in to these programs to the extent that they're eligible applicants. In the energy space, it may be utilities or regulated entities or school, or others that will be the eligible applicants. So we're trying to figure out how to make sure that they're maximizing these applications and what they're pursuing is aligned with the goals of the legislature. I think that was a theme from the Energy Committee that we talked about earlier today. In many cases, we know that regional approaches are going to be the most competitive if we're going to maximize these dollars, if we're thinking about hydrogen hubs or transmission. And so we're working hard to try to plug in with our sister states to figure out what they're doing. So, but I do want to say, and I'm sorry, I'm being taking advantage of your question there to give a lecture, so I'll stop. But I think Representative Walker had a great point, which is many of the, especially these competitive programs, and certainly for the formula, the feds rarely just give away money for free. They need matching funds, right, from the state or from localities in order to unlock the dollars. And especially for competitive programs, we may not even know yet what the percentage match will be required that's necessary to turn the key in the lock and get the funds here to Connecticut. So absolutely, we want to have, share awareness with this committee, especially with our other committees of jurisdiction, about where those matching funds may be needed. And I think that process, especially in identifying matching funds, is a common way for us to have the legislature express where the priorities are and what the priorities are of the legislature in the types of programs that will move forward. So I hope that's helpful. I just wanted to say that because we're working like round the clock on this, and there's lots of different jurisdictional entities that have a role to play, and we're hopeful that we can provide the information you're asking for in a way that will ensure we're well aligned, because that alignment is going to be absolutely critical for us to chase these, to outcompete 49 other states and lots of other regions to bring more than our 1% that we typically get back to Connecticut.
Thank you, Commissioner. So just a brief question. I did try to prepare for this hearing, and could you tell me whether or not the agency submitted testimony in support of this bill or opposition?
So we have, submitted, I believe, testimony that was not in support of the legislation, but also.
All right. So can I stop you right there? So if I could.
Sure.
The reason we're here is to make it clear that we intend to have a bill, and we intend to have an opportunity to talk about what the state's priorities are, along with the agencies that we're hearing today. But when I read testimony that I think used the word opposed, and if I didn't, I apologize, it makes it tough. I did read your clean water comments, and I understand the need. I respect the fact that the needs are many. But we're just trying to find out what portion of those federal dollars are available to the state of Connecticut, and the legislature has what obligations. So the point you make about making sure the matching grants are there, we get that part. But if we believe as a legislature that certain portions of these dollars would be better directed somewhere else, that doesn't mean you have no opinion. I respect the administration's ability to offer an opinion, and in some cases you have technological expertise that we don't have. But I would like to think we'd have a dialogue. And so again, if I'm wrong about the flavor of the testimony, maybe it was with respect to the timing. I don't think any one of us is trying to jam the administration up and have us not qualify for grants. We just want to have an opportunity to make clear that our legislative interests may not be in every case aligned with the administration's interest. And with respect to how these grants roll out, I think it's important to say that we would like as much detail as possible so that they're upfront known by everyone, so that someone from Warren has the same opportunity as someone from New Haven. may not have the same impact environmentally, and I respect the agency's ability to pour through all these and make determinations, but the last thing I think we want is to find out that our constituents are carved out somehow by a conversation we didn't have. And so that's why I think we want to have these conversations. So
Thank you for that. And just to clarify, our testimony identified that we have concerns with the bill. That's why I kind of went on my soliloquy to clarify I think our intentions are aligned, and a lot of our concerns are just around, how do we efficiently integrate that legislative direction in spaces where there may not be discretion. And I gather from the questions here that you're really trying to focus in on those places where there is discretion and understand the extent of it. And I think as part of that discussion, hopefully we can also identify what the operational kind of, efficiencies are, or time, how this would work. But anyway, I take your point and appreciate this back and forth.
Senator Minor, Representative Nolan, followed by Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Commissioner. Thank you for coming before us this evening. And could you, I want to just get clarity in regards to the percentage match to unlock the flow of this money. Did you say we didn't have a percentage match yet, or it's unknown?
We do in some cases, but in some cases for formula programs, for example, it's typically about 20%, but many of the programs that we have our eye on are brand new, and we have not even gotten guidance from the federal agencies about how they'll be distributed, so we don't know the match. Or if they're competitive programs, that sometimes the one element of the competition is the feds are looking to see who can raise the most match, right? So it may not be. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. It's different from program to program, but for some programs we know.
Okay.
So yeah.
And in the beginning of the meeting here, you talked about 95 different programs. Are all 95 of those programs eligible for this?
Are all 95 eligible for matching funds?
The infrastructure funds?
So those are, I just mentioned that as like, just to give the scale. So some of these programs are like the Clean Water Fund, I think is the one that probably fits and is most similar to like what Commissioner Jitani was talking about with service line replacement. So where it's a formula program with a specified match, and what the infrastructure bill has done is just increase the amount of funding that flows through that program. So it's a pretty familiar program. On the other end of the spectrum, I would say some of the programs we're tracking are, for example, there's a new like nuclear credit program that has been authorized for the first time in the infrastructure bill that could provide credits for nuclear facilities that are at risk. And, we're just starting to figure out what that would be a grant or a credit program. The rules are still being defined. We're trying to comment in an RFI on that that's coming up this month, but that's not something where matching funds would be necessary. But just giving you the range of different types of things. When I say we're tracking, 95 or dozens of programs, that gives you an example of something on the other that's not a formula program, but in scope of what we're tracking and following. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, of your list of 95 is a lot of programs. So I was hoping that we can get a list of all the programs that are going to be eligible for the funding, and also you talked about an advanced infrastructure priority list. I have never seen that, so I'm hoping that we can get also that sent to us so that we can know what the priorities of that you're talking about are on that list, and if they are they by priority?
Sure thing. So, and to your first point or first part of your comment there, there are many programs that we are tracking where DEEP is not the eligible entity to apply. It may be a municipality or like the Clean School Bus Grant Program from EPA, which is super exciting. DEEP would not be the eligible applicant for that program, but we're tracking it because we want to make sure, that municipalities or that we may need to help provide technical assistance or to think about what we can do to ensure eligible entities in Connecticut could apply. So I just give that as an example. We're tracking lots of things, but there's a subset where we might actually see the dollars come to DEEP and pass through our agency, and in an even smaller subset, that would be formula programs that would send money to DEEP. And then to your second question, Graham, very quickly on the priority list for the Clean Water Fund, which we'll be happy to provide.
Yeah, Representative Nolan, this is similar to DPH. That's required to create an intended use plan in order to be allowed to use those federal dollars. So we call it our priority list, which is also serves as the intended use plan, and that pertains to federal dollars as well as state dollars that are blended with those federal dollars that deal with wastewater infrastructure improvements, whether it be the CSOs or the wastewater treatment plants that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
And so right now, with respect to the priority list timing, we've done a call for projects from all our municipal partners. We're evaluating those projects, and we are going to be similar to DPH. It's a federal requirement. We'll be posting that. There'll be a public comment and public hearing process. But we could certainly, provide members of the committee with some information about, the types of projects that that have, sought funding at this point, and also to an earlier question from Senator Minor, or comment from Senator Minor, we do look at, creating some flexibility within that priority list by, creating a set aside for small communities, which wouldn't necessarily score as high as, the communities with the most burden with respect to the cost of the infrastructure improvements needed. So we try to make sure that all the communities in Connecticut that have needs, have some degree of funding from the state with the federal capitalization funds.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Nolan. Representative Walker, followed by Representative Dillon.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. I'm going to be very, very quick. I think I heard you said that you don't know exactly what the total amount is that you are going to be receiving yet. Is that correct?
You are muted, Commissioner. You're talking and you are muted.
Sorry, I have a lot of windows open on my computer. So we are expecting about 40 million for clean water, as you heard, and there are a few other formula programs where we have a decent estimate of how much funding will be coming to DEEP. But then there's a whole balance of other programs that are competitive programs. So we don't know if we would, if we're the eligible applicant, we don't know if we would secure the grant. And then there's other programs we're tracking that we wouldn't even be the eligible entity, but we're hoping others in Connecticut will apply. And those are also potentially competitive.
So I guess my question that I asked Commissioner Gittani, you won't be able to really give. How much, do you know how much your matching amount is?
So we have,
Yep. Oh, you do? Oh, good.
Well, okay. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to obfuscate, but hopefully with this detail, you're hearing why it's hard to specifically say. So in the governor's midterm, budget proposal, there's a proposal for 50 million in matching funds. Okay. And that is, reflecting the potential match that we've estimated across some of the formula programs, but also there's a bit of forecasting that we're doing across like the competitive programs, because we don't want to assume we don't win any competitions, right? And then end up having no matching funds, but we're also not totally certain which ones we would, right? Which competitive programs we would, but we could certainly highlight within the
50 is a good number. It's a good round number. And I just wanted to know. So thank you very much. Thank you for your answers. Thank you.
I do want to follow up. That 50 million is ARPA funds, right? It is not bonded funds.
It's ARPA funds?
Yeah. In the budget, it is ARPA funds, right?
That was not my understanding, but let me confirm that with we have a separate, proposal kind of recommending for ARPA funds, for example, for parks infrastructure.
Saw that.
That's separate, I believe, from this 50 million, which I believe is bonded. But
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Let me
That's all
clarify
right.
that.
We'll
That's
get that,
okay.
if you could get
We'll get
that
it.
back to us. We want to understand that, and we want to understand if we're bonding $50 million, exactly what we're doing it for. But that, we also want to know what we're doing with ARPA dollars. We may have more immediate needs for ARPA dollars. Representative Dillon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner and Graham. Actually, I'm going to ask a question that I think I've asked over the years of your department, but what form is your effort towards reducing or abating combined sewer overflow going to take?
What did you say? Did you say what form?
Yeah, are we talking about sewer separation, or
Yep.
are we sort of, and just as New Haven actually was not getting dollars for a long time, and then about 10 years ago, it turned out that West River had the worst combined sewer overflow, and there was a very exciting cooperation between the town of Woodbridge and the town of New Haven representatives to work with the water authority. I don't know if it all got done, and this is reminding me I need to circle back. What kinds of things are going to be available? I think of sewer separation. I like bioswales on public land, but I don't know that others do. We're big fans here. What kinds of things can you offer?
Terrific. Happy. There is I'll just clarify, because I can confirm the 50 million to the previous question is from bond funds as is proposed. And then to your excellent question, Representative Dillon, I want to ask Graham Stevens to talk a little bit more. Well, this is such an important program in terms of addressing combined sewer overflow, especially after you think about all the intense rainfall we saw last summer in our state. Graham?
That's right.
Quickly.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Dillon. Great question. So there's a lot of different strategies for combined sewer areas. Obviously there's a sewer separation project where you take so just so everyone knows, combined sewer overflow areas convey sewage and stormwater in the same pipes. And during intense rainfall situations, that pipe is too small to accommodate. And so they bypass that before it gets to the wastewater treatment plant and discharge it to water courses. So there has been some success in Connecticut with separation. Some of the bigger systems, which is in the Hartford region, the Metropolitan District Commission has actually worked with the state of Connecticut to build a large tunnel underground, which will essentially be holding a significant amount of CSO flow, and then during drier weather, pumping it out of that tunnel and treating it through the normal wastewater treatment plant. New Haven is looking at doing a myriad of different, approaches to dealing with the CSO separation, as well as trying to decrease the amount of, stormwater that's charged into the sewage system. And deep, and many of the municipalities are certainly starting to understand the great value in some of these nature-based solutions to dealing with the stormwater, right? If not all the stormwater gets into the stormwater system, then it's not going to be charging the combined sewer and causing a discharge. And, thankfully last session, with the support of the legislature, we enacted a broad authority for municipalities to stand up stormwater authorities. And these authorities are then able to, have the small amount of funds. It's not a lucrative program, but a small amount of funds to manage some of those green infrastructure projects that you mentioned, which will help in CSO communities and also in communities with separated sewer that has capacity issues and flooding as a result of that system backing up and causing local floods. So we're looking at everything across the board. We don't have the final guidance on the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, but I will say back in 2009, there was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, And EPA did require a 20% set aside of what was given to the states to be used for green infrastructure. So that might be something that we're going to see, and we're anticipating that, and potentially we'll have an additional call for projects, or a first come, first serve basis under the priority list for said projects if that is offered.
Thank you. And just to clarify, if you could provide a list to us of those strategies. If I recall, the federal government actually provided financial assistance on sewer separation until, I think, 1980. That was eliminated by an election, actually. So that I don't know if that's always the best strategy, but if you have a list available of all the strategies, I know there's been criticism from some places over the years that some water systems are better capitalized than others, and are we efficient and all that. I don't mean where I live, but others. So anything you could provide the committee with in terms of strategies that are available. I know that we all have good people that are following this in our towns, and some of them are volunteers. A lot of them are volunteers, actually. So thank you very much, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you very much. Thank you very much. Commissioner, I don't see any other questions for your agency, although I know there'll be a lot. I just want to say that, again, like Commissioner Giuttani, your staff is always responsive to us, and Graham in particular has been very helpful on a lot of different projects. He's a real asset for the state on a plethora of issues. And if you're interested, we will break the department up a little bit and give you some flexibility. Just let us know. Thank you. Up next would be Commissioner Gilletti. And I know that he may not be on, so Garrett, are you on? Unfortunately, just so everybody knows, Commissioner Gilletti, unbeknownst to us, was down talking to the federal government about these programs and what we could get up here, and he was getting on a plane to come back up. So we have his multiple seconds in commands that are here with us. And so Garrett, we have similar questions for you as we have been asking the other commissioners, sort of how much money is coming in, how much was already expected to come in, and what is that delta difference that we have in, is it over 5 years? That kind of thing. Give us a little bit of an outline. And I think yours is much more straightforward because you deal with roads, bridges, things that are made with concrete and pavement. Not always speaking, but you do have some in other transportation initiatives. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator Austin, Representative Walker. Yes, Commissioner Gilletti extends his apologies. He was on earlier listening to it, but he was literally boarding a flight right now. He met with Secretary Buttigieg earlier today, and he's coming back from that meeting. So in the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law, Connecticut stands to receive $5.38 billion in formula funding over the next 5 years. That is about $1.62 billion more than we previously expected to receive based on the previous 5-year federal infrastructure law. And so just to lay the groundwork, what they did when they passed this law is they took the 5-year transportation bill that they do every 5 years, they passed it again, but added on to it, and that became the bipartisan infrastructure law. So of the $1.62 billion in additional funding that Connecticut will be receiving in our formula programs, a little over $800 million of that is going towards or a little under $800 million of that is going towards 4 new programs that they created in this bill. They are a bridge formula program, which never existed before. And I'll walk through all 4, and then I'll talk about each one and the dollar amount for each one. So the bridge formula program will receive $561 million over 5 years. And there are specific intricacies about that bill or about that program. There is an electric vehicle infrastructure program, which is brand new. and Connecticut will receive 52.5 million over 5 years. We have a carbon reduction program, which Connecticut will receive 79 million over 5 years. And then there's a program called Protect, which is focused on resilience in our transportation infrastructure. And Connecticut will get 90 million over 5 years. So all told, that's 782.5 million over 5 years for the 4 new programs they created in the infrastructure law. So that leaves 837.5 million in additional funding for Connecticut that they're baking into the previous programs that Connecticut DOT already administers today. So that's about 5.38 billion over 5 years for Connecticut in our formula programs that we will receive. And that does not include the competitive grant programs totaling over $100 billion over 5 years for the whole nation to compete for. And I can share all this with you as well. We've shared it with a few different committees. We'll share it with the Appropriations Committee as well.
We appreciate that, Garrett. That's exactly the kind of information that we're looking for, that sort of outlines everything that we have going on. So let me see if we have any questions. Representative Nolan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I was just wondering, with the four, the bridge formula, electric vehicle, carbon reduction, Protect, can you give us brief synopsis, send us brief synopsises of all those programs so that we can fully understand them and understand how the money is going to be broken down within those programs, being new programs? You know, those
yes.
Also want to be able to talk about to our constituents and to one another so that we can see where, you know, we should be focusing our attention on and how we should have input to these things.
Absolutely, Representative Nolan. So the federal, I think as a representative or as Commissioner Gittani and Commissioner Dykes mentioned, the federal government's scrambling to put out guidance on a lot of this. So we do have detailed information on 2 of the programs, which we can share with you, the bridge program and the electric vehicle. The other 2, we don't have any guidance yet on, but we can give you a short summary of what we expect to see and exactly how much money will be in there. I can tell you the bridge formula program, I have met with CCM and COST to let our local municipal officials know about these programs, because in addition to the formula funds that are coming to Connecticut, there will be a major competitive grant program for them as well. And in the bridge formula program, at least 15% of the funds have to go to what are called off-system bridges. So it's local bridges. So we flagged that for local governments. And there's going to be $15.8 billion in competitive grants just for bridges. So we want local governments to prepare for that. On the electric vehicle side, we just received guidance about a week and a half ago that we're still digesting, but it does require us to develop an action plan as to how we would like to spend the funding. We need to consult with the federal government and get their approval, but in that process, it requires detailed stakeholder engagement with the legislature, with local governments, with businesses, with utilities, with our sister agencies. So they gave us detailed instructions of how to develop that plan. And our first year of that, it's only $7.7 million to spend in the first year. And they very clearly delineate it can only be a mile away from the interstate highway. So it's going to be restrictive as to where we can spend that money, but it's our action plan is due in August, so we will be in touch with the legislature, with municipalities, with businesses in the next few weeks to begin that stakeholder engagement process.
Okay, and just another question in regards to the electric vehicles. Is that just for the infrastructure of what's needed for electric vehicles, or will there be any funding in there to that will benefit constituents in regards to changing over to electric vehicles because of the statement by the governor of wanting to be electric vehicle Connecticut in the next bunch of years?
Great question. So the federal highway funding that Connecticut DOT will be receiving is just for the installation of what are called fast chargers. We have a few locations across the state, and they can charge really quickly, fill up the battery within 15 to 20 minutes. It does not help pay for the actual vehicles themselves. There are other federal programs that will help communities as well as Connecticut DOT convert our bus fleet over to electric. Those are competitive grants that we'll be applying for and local transit districts can apply for, but there are no funds for direct to consumer conversion. I believe the President Biden's Build Back Better bill did have that as a component. It has not passed, but the infrastructure law does not contain those vehicle rebates.
Okay, would that be the same for apartment complexes and
No, that's a great question.
Low income residents?
No, it's a great question. So we are hopeful the first year that they gave us some guidance, and they're going to issue different guidance every year of this EV program. The first year is only for interstate corridors a mile away, and it has to be a fast charger. They have identified certain locations they would like to see investment, like it needs to have a 24/7 access, some amenities there for people to feel safe charging. But what they've indicated is there's going to be a competitive grant program for EV charging, but also next year's and the future years of this formula program, they want to expand it what are deemed community charging. So exactly what you're talking about, multi-unit dwellings. They have a very keen focus on what are deemed Justice 40 communities, economically distressed, traditionally overburdened communities with poor air quality traditionally. That's where they have a map on their website indicating where they'd like to see investment with these federal dollars.
Representative Nolan, you are muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Representative Walker.
Thank you. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Mark, for testifying today. I just have a couple of basic questions. How much money are you getting and how much of it to this point do you know is match requirement?
Yep. So the formula funds coming to Connecticut DOT over the 5 years will be 5.38. The federal government, though, doesn't really give us the money. What they do is they issue an apportionment table breaking down this is how much Connecticut is eligible for over this federal fiscal year. And then what we need to do is we need to then, with our projects, seek payment from the federal government for those individual projects. But if you take our total 5.38 billion over the 5-year period, we do, for the most part, have to do a 20% cost share for each project. Some of them are 90-10, but for the most part, it's 80-20. And that equals to around 1.25 billion over 5 years and cost share for the state of Connecticut. And for us, though, Representative Walker, we already provide that cost share today through STO bonding program. It's about a $60 to $80 million increase each year over the next 5 years and increased cost share.
Okay, that's what I thought. And the one thing, the 4 new programs that you have there, that is now above and beyond what we've done in the past. So those are considered new programs, and the total for those 4 new programs is 782 million.
Yes.
Okay, so the reason why I asked that is because from what I've read about this, the flexibility comes into the new programs also. So that was part of the information that I wanted to point out. So thank you, guys. Thank you very, very much. And tell Commissioner Gilletti we're glad he's coming back. So thank you.
So thank you very much, Garrett. Really, I think DOT sort of understands, because we've been asking you questions on all the different programs relative to the Department of Transportation. You understand what we're trying to get at. We appreciate the information you gave. This is exactly, for all the commissioners that are listening, this is exactly the kind of information that we want. We want to see, we want to understand what the match dollars are that Representative Walker has asked each commissioner about. We want to understand where we can expand. And we want to know what's going on so that we can relate the information to our communities. And while you may be telling the COGS and the different municipalities about programs, we also want to share that information ourselves with our respective communities so that we know when something is going on, that we might be able to write a letter of support or figure out if there's anything that we can do. These are the reasons why we want to have this information, and we want to know what dollars we're going to need as match dollars. We want to understand how much we're going to be bonding out. We want to have all of this information at our fingertips. And again, we really appreciate it. And, you know, DOT has always been so responsive, and we do want to get Commissioner Gilletti back because we know the value he has in the state of Connecticut with all his connections and the different jobs that he has done. So thank you very much. I see no more questions. You are all set. So Commissioner Boughton, we're up to you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
How are you?
I'm terrific. Great to be here. And thank you, Senator Austin and Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, the whole team. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm not going to, kind of belabor what you already heard from our various agencies. I thought they did a very good job at sort of laying out the challenges and the excitement and all the wonderful things that can happen with this transformative program that the federal government has passed to us. So I don't know if we really cover any new ground by doing that. I do want to thank and take a moment to thank our federal delegation for putting this program together for us. They worked very hard in ensuring its passage from the president, obviously our congresspeople, our senators. It's appreciated. And this is a good problem to have. Having money to program and to target and to prioritize for infrastructure enhancements is an important thing for all of us. And it's a good problem that we all can work on together as a team. Governor Lamont asked me in December to serve as the senior advisor on infrastructure. Quickly, my job is to make sure that we're all working and playing from the same playbook in terms of the administration and the agencies, making sure that we're braiding together dollars where we can. For example, you may have a deep project that also has a DPH component, and making sure that we can maybe put them together and maximize even more money to make sure that DOT is talking to DEEP, which they all do a great job at this already. But remember, this is a substantial amount of new money coming in. In fact, one of the things I did not hear in the discussion was what would be the impediments to our agencies being able to execute this, regardless of who directs or how the money is directed. How can you execute this? And we know that we have significant challenges with hiring in both DEEP and DOT. And so that's something to keep in mind. DOT needs almost 200 staff people, engineers to be able to execute this huge program over the next 5 years, not counting the positions we have to backfill. So that's something we should all together keep our eye on and make sure that we're moving the hiring process forward as fast as possible. As mentioned, we have 375 unique programs, 140 existing new programs. A lot of questions have been asked about, I need to see a breakdown of where the money is. I've done that breakdown. I presented that breakdown to some members on this panel. I'll happily email it out to everybody, which will show you where all the money is being distributed and how, not how it's being spent, but where it's coming from the federal government. In addition to that, as you heard, 60% of this money goes to existing grant programs, but where the excitement is, where I think we can really do some tremendous work on our infrastructure is the 40% of competitive grants. And that is an area where we'll need to be fast, we'll need to be agile, we'll need to be transparent, we'll need to engage the community. But in order for the state to be able to apply, that's one thing. But remember, as mentioned, we have cities and towns that can apply on their own. So it's important that we're all working together. And that's what I do. I go out and I meet with mayors and first selectmen. I've met with many legislators, COGS, our federal delegation, you name it. I pretty much have been in the room with them as we talked about how best to deploy this money. Look, I look at today's discussions as a way to work hand in hand with your committee, with other committees. We are getting ready to launch a website. We've staffed up to be able to deploy this money so that people know where the money is going and how it's being spent. We'd like to implement some kind of reporting program with you, Senator, and your entire team, as well as the other committees of cognizance, so that we all can be part of what can really be a tremendous day and a tremendous moment in Connecticut's history. So with that, I thank you for your time. I appreciate all of the discussion that we've already had, and commend you for so much interest in infrastructure.
So Commissioner, you know, I have great respect for all the work that you've ever done, and I genuinely think that you are a very talented man. But please tell me, in the town of Danbury, or the city of Danbury, when you were down there, you would squeeze a dime out of every single way. I am not convinced that we need the position that the governor put you in and the additional staff that are there. And I say that with all due respect, because I, like you, cut positions after positions in the tiny little town where I was first selectman. And I really just don't see the value when we have very talented commissioners that all of us have voted on to put in that place. And so, all due respect, if you could send us something that would say why you believe that we need to have an additional layer of government to handle this dollar amount. I'm really very much interested in that component of things, because I don't see the need for it right now when we just talked to all of the commissioners from the main agencies that will be handling this, other than DEEP, which we enlarged when we put energy over there. All of them have very talented people. And so, you know, if you could send something to us as we consider this bill, and I think that, you know, when we hear people say we want to make sure that there's not going to be gold-plated sidewalks or whatever people say, that's never been the case in Connecticut, and it's not going to be the case now. But I really just think that this is something that we have to talk about. And when we're looking to see whether we put an additional NCON officer because people are using our parks more, or 8 or 10 or 20 people in this project that we're working on with you, it's really questionable whether there's really that need. And I say that with all due respect, because I absolutely like everything that you have done in Danbury, and I like what you're doing over at DRS, and I have contemplated whether to ask these questions or not, but I really feel it's necessary that we get down to the details on this. And so if you wouldn't mind sending us some information on the value that you see as someone who ran a town, a city that is vitally important in Connecticut, one of our growing cities. So we want to make sure that we understand the value that you perceive is available to us by having this additional layer of government.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to do that for you, Senator. Appreciate your comments. Let me just say, this is not an additional layer of government. I don't get any more pay for doing this. I get paid my DRS salary, and that's it. So it's not like it's a new position. So as mayor, I often ask people to take on dual roles just for that reason, to save money. But we're not alone here. More than 30 states have already assigned infrastructure coordinators across the country. In fact, the President of the United States assigned Mitch Landrieu, a former mayor of New Orleans and Lieutenant Governor of Louisiana, to handle all of the infrastructure rollout, over $1 trillion across the country. We meet on a regular basis. In fact, we met with the White House just last week. I meet with my fellow coordinators around from the United States. In fact, they're in DC right now. Unfortunately, I couldn't go because of this hearing. So this is not a one-off kind of approach. It's an approach being adopted across the United States of America for the very reason that there are 375 unique programs. You go from broadband to cybersecurity all the way over to bridges and to roads. And if we want to make sure that we're going to get every nickel that's due to us, we've got to make sure that we are chasing it, and we've got systems in place to do that. Look, we're going to get $6 billion without doing anything. To pay me nothing to go out and help chase that, that's a pretty good bargain for the state of Connecticut. But I think we can get more than that if we're all working together on the same page. And frankly, it's difficult sometimes for agencies to look at the broader, bigger picture. They're busy, man. I just told you DOT needs 200 new employees. Katie needs 70 new employees. There are contractual issues that we're working through right now in the new contract coming up related to her employees. So this isn't just I don't do the job of DOT or do the job of DEEP or do the job of DPH. I coordinate all these folks together. We meet every 2 weeks in the governor's office to talk about, is there guidance out? Where is the guidance being issued? Who's responsible for it? How do we execute it? This is the guidance book right here for the guidance. The guidance to the guidance is over 400 pages before they've even issued a guidance for one of those 375 programs. So I think it very much is needed, but I'll happily provide a justification, if you will, a narrative to you and to the committee where you can share it however you feel. And we'll provide that. Give me a couple of days and I'll pull that together for you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Representative Walker. Representative Walker, you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioner. You and I have not really worked together, so I look forward to working with you going forward. But I will say that DEEP and DOT have had that number of openings since last summer. And I'm very concerned behind that because if they've had those openings since last summer, slowing down the project is going to be unbelievable because we can't fill our positions. I worry more about that right now than anything else. We need to make sure that our positions are strengthened because it's going to take at least 3 to 4 months for the people to get into the positions to do the job that we hope that will happen. And granted, we have 5 years, but I think as you pointed out and many other people pointed out here, that we need to hit the ground running. So explain to me how we're going to close that gap quickly in those agencies when we know that it has not happened in 9 or 10 months almost.
Yeah, so this is 200 more jobs on top of the vacancies that you already had.
Oh, well, then
So
that makes it easier.
More difficult, right? Not counting who's punching out related to the retirements, the retirement cliff that we've all heard about. So we're doing a couple of things. One is, and again, one of the benefits of having somebody looking at the larger picture here and not necessarily getting in the weeds on what bridge is getting built, is looking at our onboarding process right now. And if you go to the CREATES report, you'll see that we take an extraordinarily long time to bring somebody on board. When we look at, for example, the state of Texas, when they go to one of the various trade shows or professional development weekends for engineers and the like involved in public works, they bring their HR people with them. They sit them in a room and you can go in and fill out an application and get a yes or no by the end of the weekend, whether you're ready to be hired. And it takes them about 3 or 4 weeks beyond that to actually put you into the job. We need to be that agile if we're going to get this thing done. Commissioner Dykes' challenge is a little bit different because we have other agencies poaching some of her engineers in particular because there's a different work hours in the workday. So we think we're working on getting that remedied in the contract. But what I have been working previously with Commissioner Gabal and now I'm working on my own is trying to speed up in particular Commissioner Gilletti's challenge in DOT because we're not going to be able to execute these dollars if we don't have the horsepower to do that. And people will come back to you and say, well, what about outsourcing? And well, we already do a lot of that. So we only turn out 200 engineers a year from Connecticut's school system, our state university system. We got to think outside the state. We got to be robust, and it's going to involve me traveling around trying to recruit people to come work for Connecticut.
I hear you, but I mean, the one thing that people said about the idea of the bill that we proposed is that it's going to slow down the process. The process is already slowed down and we had nothing to do with it. The process is not going forward fast enough because of the fact that we don't have the staffing that we need to do. And saying now we need it, but we knew that we needed it back then, makes me very concerned because I don't see the urgency that I feel that we need to exhibit in order to fill those positions. But I'll leave that alone. But there are so many possibilities that we can do with the money that we're getting in this. And there are other entities in the infrastructure bill that that I'd read about that are specifically, designed for the communities that need a lot of it, which is some of the cleanup programs. And they said reconnecting the communities and the natural gas. I didn't hear anything about natural gas distribution and a lot of those things. So I think that we all have a lot of information and we all have a lot of energy in this. So I look forward to working with everybody on this because, as you know, we represent the people of Connecticut, and I know you do too. So we all have to have a voice at the table to do that. So I look forward to the collaboration that we're going to have and the final entity that we will have to make all of our colleagues feel comfortable enough to sign on the dotted line and say we want to go forward with this. So thank you very much, sir, for coming to talk, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Walker. Representative Dillon, followed by Representative Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Representative, good to see you.
It's been a long time since we've chatted. I guess I'm thinking of years ago, and it's been a while, but being in the private sector when you got appointed, I thought, what's the organizational chart? How does this go? Governor, you have OPM, we have the commissioners, and now we've got this guy, do you have, nothing personal, you are a guy. Where do you fit in the decision-making tree in terms of OPM and the commissioners?
That's a great question. So if you look at a table of organization, like you mentioned, I sit in the middle. I don't make decisions about projects. You just heard from DOT. You heard from DEEP. We've got as mentioned, very learned commissioners and great staffs that work really hard. My job is to sit in the middle and be sort of the traffic cop between OPM, DAS, Office of the Governor, and our agencies, and make sure that the work is flowing, that agencies are talking together. That's why we have biweekly meetings specifically to talk about IIJA and where each of us are, and make sure that when there is a challenge, like we just heard from Representative Walker, like hiring, that's elevated upward, or if there's specific things about the hiring, that's elevated upward as well, so that we can try to address that. I'm a force multiplier for our commissioners. My job is to go out and help them do the things that they don't have time to do because they have to run a whole agency on top of all this, plus deploy all these new programs, projects, and dollars, as we talked about. So think of me as sort of the maestro in the middle, but I don't make decisions about which bridge we're going to build or how that's going to be done. There's, as you heard, there's a very rigorous process in each of the agencies to do that.
With all due respect, and I guess it sounds like the Supreme Court people saying we just call balls and strikes. I'm still, my question, and I don't have any particular agenda here except is to figure out how the decision-making is going to work. Is if you're making sure everything is going.
Yeah, okay. So
if it isn't working, should I call you?
You certainly can.
I love to call you, but
you're always welcome to. Representative Center's already doing that, and so rather than if they have a question about the IIJ, if they're not sure how it works, or if they want me to come out and look at a program or a project that's in their community, I'm happy to do that. I take notes. I will then bring it back to DOT, or I might bring it back to DEEP or to DPH and say, hey. I just met with a bunch of folks related to well contamination up in Tolland in that area, and looking at how we can leverage some of these dollars to be able to address that problem. That may be a competitive grant, and that's really also part of my job is to help cities and towns apply for these grants outside of the IIJ. Remember, 40% of this are competitive grants for municipalities, counties, as well as states. So if a small town needs to write a grant, that could be a real challenge for them. They may not have the staff, they may not have an engineer on board, they may not have a grant writer or a city town planner. So I can help them with those resources to get that grant application in and then direct it to where it should go. We're currently working on a process for that so that they can utilize the COGS as well. But ultimately, the idea here is to go out and to work closely with particularly those people that don't have the resources. The bigger cities or towns, the Danburys, we have a city planner, we have an engineer, they could probably sit down and craft it. They may want to check in with me and say, what would make this a better application for the federal government? And I would tell them, well, they really want regional stuff. Can you pair up with a town next to you? Can both of you sign on to the grant? And then you have a much stronger application. So those competitive grants haven't even kicked off yet because the money hasn't been funded yet, and it should be hopefully by the end of next month. And that's 40% of this money. That's $550 billion nationally. So it's pretty profound, and we want to make sure our cities and towns are able to leverage that money. And I work with COST and CCM as well.
Okay, I'm not sure I have the organizational chart clear in my head yet, but I do want to thank you for being here, and I can't say enough about the chairs of this committee for convening this. I think it's really brought us, I think, along. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Nice seeing you again, too.
Thank you, Representative Nolan, followed by Representative Rosario, and then we will be on to the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fellow Commissioner, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but I heard you mention a couple of things that I just wanted to ask about. You talked about doing a lot of traveling and finding people outside of Connecticut jobs. It kind of made me think like you were bringing people into Connecticut instead of going throughout Connecticut to find people that can fill those positions. Could you elaborate on that? Because I would be hoping that you would be working with our residents in Connecticut or trying to do outreach in Connecticut before you travel. So if you could just talk on that.
That's a great point. I want to be specific about that. I was referring specifically to engineers. When I said we only produce 200 engineers a year and we need 400 to be able to do this program fully, it's difficult to find people who are certified civil engineers out there. It's a tough area to recruit. So especially with the IIJA out there, with this law out there, all the private firms are sucking up our graduates and they're paying them more than the state does, although the state's a way better job. So really, I was only referring to engineers. I think where the opportunity lies for Connecticut residents, with the money that we do get, is to put them work doing all of the construction work, all of the trades. In that, we're working with our building and trades team to be able to develop apprenticeship programs to train Connecticut people to be able to move their way into these positions. And they've got 5, 6, 7, 8 years worth of work. I mean, there's a lot of work out there in terms of doing the actual construction work. But engineers are tough to find. And again, our schools are only putting out about 200 a year. So if we're going to be able to execute this within the next 5 years, we're going to have to staff up. And we are competing against the private sector, which pays significantly more. And that's a challenge for us. So I just want to be clear about what occupation I was talking about.
Okay. So are there occupations within Connecticut that you're trying to assist with and that you have assisted with to make sure that we're filling the gaps that we have that are so large?
We're identifying those with the Office of Workforce Strategies, and those graduates can come anywhere from our VOTEC schools, our community colleges, 4-year degree programs. Potentially, there's a helmets to hard hats program for those coming out of the military. Those folks that maybe were incarcerated that have an interest or an opportunity at learning a trade, we're looking at bringing them into the program. And a lot of that we're working through with the Building and Trades Association. They've got really good apprenticeship programs where you can make a lot of money quickly, learning to be an electrician or learning to be a sheet metal worker, learning to be somebody who operates heavy equipment. and the operating engineers. Those are great high-paying jobs, and there's a real demand for them.
Okay, so those sound like a lot of things that we're trying to push in the schools to open back the trades and things with. So I'm just, I guess I'm trying to understand a little bit of some of the things that Senator Olson said in regards to filling the gap for the commissioners, as you said, you're kind of doing. So can you share with us how you filled that gap so far, as when it comes to employment and filling some of the positions since you've been here? Have you done that? Can you give us examples of people that you've brought in to fill up those spots or fill up some spots?
Sure. Well, one of the things we're doing right now, Commissioner Gilletti, and you heard Garrett prior to me, have expressed a challenge with backfilling the positions from the retirement cliff, as well as private engineering firms poaching their employees from the state. You know, there's more money in the private sector, they leave, so now we've got a hole to fill. And Commissioner Gilletti in particular has been pretty outspoken, but also on point to say it just takes too long for us to get people on board. And by the time we actually offer them a job, they've already taken one somewhere else. So the onboarding process is an issue, the recruitment is an issue, and retention is an issue as well. In terms of, there are some challenges as it relates to wages, and I think we're going to have to look at that. So those are discussions that we've begun. I started with Commissioner Jabal and at DAS, because they handle a lot of the hiring in onboarding. They have the human resources function there. And we're going to continue those discussions with Commissioner Gilman. So we think we'll be ready to bring people in. And remember, those people we bring in for IIJA, they're paid for by the federal government at 80%. So the federal government picks up 80%, we only have to pick up 20%.
So at this point, have you assisted or been I think you call it the maestro in bringing people in at this time?
Because we're reviewing the current hiring process, which is very lengthy and a lot of protocols, regulations, and rules. Some of them are warranted. Some of them I think we can consolidate and streamline. So that's what we're working on right now. We have to have our hiring plan first of how we're going to do this. Then we got to go out and develop a very robust hiring program, a recruitment program.
Okay, and in this last statement, if you could, once you find out the things that you're needing to streamline, could you let us know so we can make sure that that maybe is spread throughout all the agencies and people are making the changes that are needed to make that happen, because we all know that we're going to be needing all these positions really soon, and I think that we're going to be hurt with not being able to fill them than we are as it goes forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Happy to.
Thank you, Representative Nolan. Representative Rosario, followed by Representative Felipe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Big Papa, how are you, sir?
Representative, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I want you to do a little more traveling. I want to extend the invite down to Bridgeport. We have a phenomenal TOD project called Barnum Station. Commissioner Gilletti, entire staff, they're well aware of the project and want to get you down here, get you up to speed. And I know we have a meeting coming up soon. Just wanted to put that on your radar, offer you congratulations, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Copy that. I'll text you and we'll get that squared away.
Sounds good. Thank you, my friend. Have a good night.
Thank you, Representative Rosario. Representative Felipe, are you inviting him down to Bridgeport too?
Absolutely, but a little bit further south. Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask you about those engineering positions you were speaking about with the good representative from New London. In particular, we have a lot of engineering students from the University of Bridgeport, but the issue with them being hired in certain places, especially places like Sikorsky, is that they're international students. They're on visas. They're very, very well trained. We have one of the best programs in the Northeast, but they're not able to work with Sikorsky because of obviously national defense contracts. Are there barriers to them working for us? Because that's another way to get homegrown folks from our Connecticut universities into these kinds of programs. So I wondered if there were any barriers there.
No, I'd like to talk to you more about that. Can you email me offline and I'll give you a ring, and I'd like to hear some more about that. And if we're not recruiting down there, or we need to get down there and recruit. I mean, Commissioner Gilletti needs help, and Connecticut DOT sponsors visas. We can sponsor a work visa for somebody. So DOT has done that in the past because and geez, I want to talk more about that with you. So let's reach out and let's connect up.
Yeah, so I hang my hat there in my day job. So I'll send you an email from my official email there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Representative Felipe. Thank you, Commissioner. We're all set right now with you. We're going to go on to the public speakers now. First up is Donald Schubert. Mr. Schubert. Are you here? Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, members of the committee. My name is Don Schubert. I'm the president of the Connecticut Construction Industries Association. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to testify today. I'm here to testify in support of Section 2E of Raised Bill 106 and to express our concerns regarding the earlier sections in the bill. Before I start, I just want to let you know that we very much appreciate the Appropriations Committee's interest in ensuring that Connecticut makes the best possible use of all available funding under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We support the accountability provisions in the latter section of this bill. We firmly support requiring OPM and DOT to report to the Appropriations Committee and the Transportation Committee on a full accounting of funds received and dispersed, on a plan for the disbursement of any remaining funds, on a description of projects to be funded, and most important to the construction industry, the status of each project, including a timeline for completion. This accountability is very important, not only in retrospect, but to identify inefficiencies and delays in the project development and project finance processes that could be improved to increase our opportunities under the IIJA. Regarding the earlier sections in the bill, Senator, CCIA has been concerned about DOT's ability to develop projects in a timely fashion for 12 years now. In our opinion, the process for project development is very complicated and convoluted, and the process leaves very little room for flexibility or changes other than those that somehow fit into the mold. This same process is going to be used to ramp up the state's transportation program by nearly 40% and develop projects to compete for a wide variety of competitive grants, especially during a very compressed time frame in the first year. And it sounds like with less employees working for the agencies at the same time. We fully appreciate that this committee is proposing to review and sometimes modify funding allocations under this bill, but we're very concerned that the project development and finance process does not lend itself to this type of review and involvement. Right now, our association is very concerned about whether Connecticut will be able to scale up the program to the extent necessary to take full advantage of the IIJA funding, let alone just the formula funding, let alone try to compete for competitive grants. It's based on those concerns that we submitted testimony opposing the earlier sections of this bill. Senator, we've talked about DOT's performance over the years. I really appreciate this opportunity to testify with the committee today, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Don. I appreciate your concern on Connecticut's infrastructure. I know you've been clear and consistent for years now. Representative Felipe, you still have your hand up, but it's been up since before. Do you have another question, sir?
No, ma'am, I'll put it down.
Thank you. Representative Walker.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, Don. Thank you for your testimony. I originally started to ask when you said you didn't support the beginning parts, but you supported the certain section, because I wanted to know what your concern was, but now I understand, and we all have that concern, because and when the emphasis has been the transparency that we are trying to do and provide as the main reason why it's going to slow down the process, I think that's a false narrative. I think you've hit the nail on the head for what the real problem is, and that's why we've brought it up. And if you heard, many of us have questioned Commissioner Boughton about how are we going to fix that when we knew that problem existed well before we even got the instructions for this bill. So we intend to do as much as we can in the appropriations to push the hiring along, because we need to make sure that the jobs are there. And many of us probably know where we can go to get people for the jobs. We just have to open up those doors and let us all get in the door and talk about where these jobs are. It's not as if we don't have enough jobs. We have a lot of jobs that we could fill. So thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you, Representative Walker. You know, we're seeing this as a once in a lifetime opportunity to put a lot of people to work. And we don't want to be disappointed 5 years from now.
Thank you, Don. Are there any other comments or questions for Don? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Don. Appreciate it, and appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Senator.
Up next is Travis Woodward. Travis, you're up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Travis Woodward. I'm the resident of Hamden. I'm an engineer for Connecticut DOT. I'm also the president of CSEA SEIU Local 2001, a labor union representing over 23,000 state, municipal, Board of Ed, active and retired public and private sector workers, including the engineers and other transportation professionals at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I offer the following testimony. I did submit written testimony in support of the bill, but after rereading it, I'm changing that to neutral. We can't support it as written. And it's, of course, Senate Bill 106. Historic federal investment in transportation through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has the potential to not just improve our state's roads and highways, but to massively enhance how we travel. This money is spent wisely and strategically. We can have the ability to slash traffic delays, make our roads safer, and provide a foundation for substantial and far-reaching economic growth. And I understand that the legislature wants to have more input on this process, but we have to let engineering and science dictate how and where the money is spent, not politics. And we have the best and brightest engineers, scientists, and planners at DOT and DEEP, and they should be the ones making the decisions. The people I work alongside at DOT are excited about this challenge, but there's some important issues we want to highlight for you. DOT is critically understaffed, as you know, with the silver tsunami coming. We are competing with every state in the union for talented and qualified engineers and other professionals. In-house staff at DOT do it better, faster, and for less. Based on cost effectiveness evaluations conducted by the DOT, Connecticut wastes over $100 million a year on outsourcing engineering and construction inspection services alone. Proper oversight reduces the misuse of funds. The oversight envisioned by this bill is important, but it's not the only precaution. That's why we encourage you to fully fund the State Contracting Standards Board. The federal infrastructure package will bring money and opportunity to Connecticut. It would be wise to invest in the state workforce and the Contracting Standards Board while reducing our need to use higher costing outside consultants. Properly staffed DOT, fully functioning Contracting Standards Board are really important. I urge you to take a closer look at the governor's transition plan when he started. The plan specified putting DOT in charge of hiring. DAS is the problem for hiring right now. It takes 11 months to hire an engineer that is in school to get them working at DOT. Texas does it in 2 weeks. And that's saying something. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Representative Walker.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you for your testimony. I think we agree and then we disagree at the same time. First of all, politics is what got us the funding. So we that's part of the process that happens. It is all of the issues that you said that you saw were concerned. We all have that same concern, and we are all working very vigilantly to try and move things along. But I will say that if we don't have some sort of input in the process, it could end up costing us more in the long run if something is misused or misplaced in the wrong areas without really being vetted a little bit more than just in one agency. Then it could cost us some sort of penalty or something else. So it's important that we participate in it. We're not trying to, again, obstruct. All we want to do is understand so that when people in Connecticut ask, what are we doing with it and how are we doing it, we're able to explain to them what's going on. It is not to try and control or play tug of war. It's just to make sure that the information is shared. So thank you for testifying, and we're going to work hard, definitely hard, on trying to get. I like your idea of adopting Texas way of hiring. Never thought I'd say that, but anyhow, thank you, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Representative. And may I just say, if as long as the legislative body is not an extra step in the process to getting the jobs out, and maybe you just want to send a liaison over there so you know what they're doing and can watch as it's happening, it'd make a lot more sense and be a lot more.
We're not engineers, so we're not going to try and get in that way. We just want to make sure our job is just to make sure that the dollars are being spent in the way that we know is going to help Connecticut. That's all.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Travis. Up next is Christopher Fryxell. Christopher? I don't see him on. Oh, we have the House Minority Leader here, Representative Candelora. You are up, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Austin and Chairman Walker and Ranking Members France and Minor. I did want to just submit testimony. I appreciate your indulgence in favor of this bill. I do recognize, and I've read the testimony from the agencies, and I know there's certainly challenges, but I think you're getting to an important issue that we all care very much about. It's been pretty overwhelming, I think, the amount of federal money that has been flowing through our state, and making sure that we have the proper safeguards in place to make sure those policy decisions are followed through. I think, as you all know, the legislature sets the policy, and last year in particular, one of those policies that we came to on a compromise agreement was funding the unemployment trust funds. And we know right now where that money is right now, and the policy changed, and somebody is, intending to use it in a different way than what we intended. And so to not have that ability to continue to monitor and have a say in the process, I think, is troubling. And I think so looking at legislation like this, even looking at the back end of the process, I think to Representative Walker's point, making sure the money is being spent correctly after the fact, that might be part of what we would want to do with legislation to get proper reporting in front of us. In listening to the testimony today, I will speak frankly, that was a little troubling to me, as I think a remark was made that legislative leaders were briefed. And I guess depending on what you define as a legislative leader, I thought I fall under that definition as the House Republican leader. I've not been briefed at all on any of this funding. And so that alone concerns me. We talk about this infrastructure bill being used for roads and bridges, putting our construction teams back to work. I'm not sure, and I think the points are made, that where there's discretionary funding, will the money go there, or will it go toward clear cutting, trees along the sides of highways, which I know there's bills in the Environment Committee addressing that. So I think that I appreciate this bill. I think we as a legislature need to have a seat at the table, and I wanted to weigh in and echo my support by submitting this testimony. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Candelara, and we all consider you a leader in the General Assembly also. Representative Walker. You're muted, ma'am.
I know, I'm so tired. I'm sorry, but thank you, Representative Candelara, for your testimony. And we didn't get briefed, so I'm trying to figure out who in leadership got briefed. So when we find out, we'll let it. If you find out, let us know. But I think that you're spot on. We did the right thing before, and things didn't happen. So we have to be a little bit more vigilant about making sure it's very clear about how we want things to be done. Not obstructing. Right. But just in, we're part of the conversation. And if you listen to some of the testimonies and the questioning, one of the things that we pointed out is that there is matching money that they have to get, and it has to come from the General Assembly. So that in itself lets us know that we do have a part in this, and we just have to make sure that people understand. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Representative France.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Candelara, for coming in and giving your support to this program. And I think your comments are spot on, as well as others who, it's really the legislative role to provide oversight to the executive branch and the execution. There's one question: is there, in providing that oversight and what we've witnessed from the federal money that's gone out, are there your thoughts on how maybe the legislature can do a better job of providing that oversight in the execution of what we've tasked the executive branch to do, so that we don't get into some of the position we're in now, where we passed legislation, gave direction, not executed, and we're now months and months later and still not having them execute as we had passed.
Well, as I pointed out in my testimony, I think to attempt to avoid the constitutional issues that I think OPM pointed out is maybe looking at, similar to the Transportation Strategy Board that we've had in the past. It might need to be a little bit broader, but some type of review board in that regard could provide a level of oversight. I think there needs to be somebody there that is working with our local municipalities, whether it is clean water or, the roads and bridges. I mean, I know there's a lot of moving parts to this, but how do we prioritize these plans, especially when it comes to transportation? We all know we struggle to keep it solvent, and this money coming in is going to provide solvency for our transportation plan. So I think we need a role in that, because this money that's really supplanting the transportation dollars that we need needs to fill in that gap. And if I'm making sense, so it really is becoming part of that budget. And that's why I point to the strategic board that I know I think it was under Governor Malloy, the funding was stripped, but is that a vehicle that might make sense to look at this, to make sure that we are doing a long-term plan as it comes to the roads and bridges?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, you're all set.
Thank you.
Get some rest,
You
Representative. Up next is we're going back to Christopher Freisel. I don't know if I said your last name right, so.
Close enough. Thank you. Well, thank you, Senator Austin and Representative Walker, Representative France, members of the committee. I really appreciate the opportunity. So I'll be brief. I submitted written testimony, but we are in support of this bill, certainly the concept of it. One of the previous speakers expressed some concerns about adding to delays that already exist with projects. We do share those concerns, although Representative Walker, particularly you, have sort of addressed that, and we do appreciate what you said on that. So thank you. But what I want to use my time to talk about is something pretty specific. and that is project labor agreements. So if this committee is going to take some oversight of spending through the infrastructure program, we are asking you to include in that oversight the use of project labor agreements. So basically, in short, what that is a pre-hire agreement between an owner, so in this case, it would be the state, and the building trades, which guarantees the use of union labor on a project. To put it more plainly, it's a no-bid state contract negotiated behind closed doors. And so that's what we're sort of highlighting right now. They are used for DOT projects. We've got a few going on right now. There's an Amtrak station in Windsor Locks that has a PLA. I had to FOI the details of that PLA, so it wasn't negotiated out in public. The state pier, for example, has a PLA. Not only was that decision not made publicly, but the Port Authority themselves had told me that there's actually no backup documentation as to why they made that decision. The Gold Star Bridge is another one. That is a PLA. The information they used to make that decision is a study that collected data from 2017, assuming the project would be done in 2018. And as the project progresses right now, they're missing data, including data from the renovation of the southbound side of the bridge, which was done without a PLA. So you have my written testimony. We're very concerned about it. All we're asking, in my suggestion right now is not to eliminate them. It's just to shed some sunlight on them. As we're talking about transparency and oversight, this is something that could potentially increase the cost of these projects, make those federal dollars go shorter, not as far as they should, and discriminate, quite frankly, against a lot of Connecticut businesses who are reputable and qualified to do the work. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions. You have my written, and it includes my contact information. So thank you again for the opportunity to address this matter.
Thank you. You have a couple questions. Senator Lesser, followed by Representative Porter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chris, for your testimony. I think I must have misheard something because you referred to PLA projects as no bid contracts.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but every single PLA that's been issued has been subject to competitive bidding process in Connecticut. Is that not the case?
No, that's absolutely not the case. The PLA is negotiated between the owner, so for example, the state, and the building trades. When there's a PLA, that doesn't go out to bid. That document is signed behind closed doors. And
no,
then,
I think you're using some imprecise language, and I just want to be very clear about what we're talking about.
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
a project labor agreement will specify wages. The specific contracts go out to bid. Is that correct, or is that not correct?
Well, the PLA specifies a number of things, but one of the things that it specifies is that the labor used on a project will be hired from a union hall. So in that regard, it is a contract. It's a set of agreements. It's signed by the building trades. It's signed by members of the state. It's a contract.
You're saying that the project itself does not go out to bid? Is
No,
that really what you're telling this committee?
No. That's not what I'm saying at all. The project itself goes out to bid. However, you're taking a labor.
Do the specific packages go out to bid?
Yes, they do.
Okay. So when you said that the project didn't go out, when you called it a no bid contract, but you said, in fact, you're now saying that the project goes out to bid, and you're saying that the packages go out to bid.
Yeah.
By my understanding, that's not a no bid contract. That's a bid contract.
Well,
It seems to me, and I apologize, and I apologize for my tone, Madam Chair, but it seems to me that what you're trying to do is to try to connect PLAs to like a very disturbing scandal that's right now occupying the front pages in Connecticut and has attracted the attention of the members of this committee and the legislature as a whole, and trying to tie the two together. But as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, sir, that the company that's at the center of the probe that is of enormous issue is actually one of your members and a non-union shop. Is that not the case?
Well, so to address your first point, ABC, which I represent, has always been against project labor agreements, and our opposition to them has nothing to do with the investigation that you're talking about.
So you're
There is
saying you're saying you weren't trying just now when you erroneously called PLA
Senator Lesser,
no bid contracts. You said you're not trying to create an inference in the minds of folks who are listening between this and the scandal that we're all very concerned about in the state. That wasn't your intent.
No, that's not my intent. And in fact, what I'm talking about is any percentage of any project, a significant percentage of that project goes to labor costs. And so let's just say I'm going to guarantee a certain group gets all of the materials for a project. While there may not be a dollar number attached to that contract, there's certainly a significant value to the guarantee that a certain group is going to get to supply all of the materials to a project. So I don't see why a contract, I mean, a PLA is a contract. It doesn't go out to bid. It is worth a significant sum in that it's guaranteeing, right? The labor on that project is going to an organization. So I understand your concern. That's not what I'm trying to do. There are 24 states have outlawed the use of PLAs for state-funded projects for exactly that reason.
And just one last question, and I'll want to thank the committee for its very generous allocation of time. You're saying that under the prevailing wage, that puts non-union shops at a disadvantage because are they all paid the same amount?
So sometimes folks tend to mix up prevailing wage and PLA. They're not the same. So prevailing wage is going to apply on these projects regardless of whether or not a PLA is there. So the PLA is not going to change the fact that these are going to be prevailing wage jobs. What the PLA typically stipulates is that labor must be hired from a union hall. That contractors, even if they're paying, let's say, health benefits, 401k, pension, whatever the case may be to their own employees, if they're going to bid on this project, they have to keep paying those benefits, but they also have to pay the union benefit. They have to assign themselves to certain union work rules that perhaps they don't abide by with their own workforce. They can't bring their own. I mean, I have members that are family-owned businesses for generations that have generations of people who work for them. They can't bring their own employees to that job. And these are not fly-by-night companies. These are reputable companies with a good track record of success in the state working on infrastructure projects. They are discriminated against. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's
Senator Lesser, are you all set, Senator Lesser?
I'm all set, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Representative Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony, Chris. I'm just listening to the conversation. The first thing I want to gain some clarity on is, I'm not sure if you said, but I just want to state that there are no legal obstacles for companies to bid, for PLA projects, union or non-union. So that's not what you were saying. Is that correct?
Representative, you're correct. So stipulated, okay. But I want to be clear about this because technically, yes, an open shop contractor is allowed to bid on a PLA. However, because of the rules that are typically included in a PLA, it doesn't make any sense for them. So you're correct. I'm not suggesting that it's illegal somehow for an open shop contractor to bid on these projects. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that because of how they are constructed, because of how they are put together, the open shop contractors are at a disadvantage because they can't bring their own people. They can't bring their own employees with them. They have to pay double benefits. They have to follow union work rules when their employees are able to cross skill. So that's what I'm talking about. Just thank you for the clarification.
Yes, thank you, because I know it's, you can choose to bid on these PLAs, and there are plenty of non-union companies that actually do that. So I also want to state that for the record. The other thing that I just want to say is You know, President Biden actually is doing a lot around this. He is signing executive orders to improve timelines, to lower costs, increase the quality in federal construction projects. And he's looking at PLA and requiring the use of project labor agreements on federal construction projects over $35 million. The order will help to alleviate the management and coordination challenges and all that stuff that's stemming progress on major construction projects. So I want the full spectrum of this picture to be illustrated here today, because you're saying some things that don't actually resonate factually. Let me put it that way. You know, raising quality standards for contractors bidding on federal projects. PLAs help raise the standards of all bidders on federal contracts. Contractors who offer lower wages or do not train their workers will not need to raise their standards to compete with other high-wage, high-quality companies. Businesses with well-trained workers will be more likely to bid for and win federal contracts, like the company that you just referred to. You know, well-trained, high-quality workers are more productive, completing projects well and on time. And I think these are the things that we want to know as, you know, state elected officials who are going to be responsible for appropriating these funds, that we are raising the quality standards for contracting and helping to alleviate the coordination challenges on large, complex projects, which a lot of these are going to be. We're talking multi-million-dollar projects, and they can present some real challenges to primary contractors on the project. So I want to put that on the record that, you know, I hear what you're saying, but it certainly does reduce the uncertainty in the contracting process. It increases training for the federal contracting workforce. There are a lot of pluses to these PLA agreements. So just in rebut to what you're saying, I wanted to take this opportunity to put that on the record. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much, Representative Porter.
Just briefly, Representative, thank you very much. You're absolutely correct. President Biden is doing a lot on the project labor agreements when it comes to infrastructure projects. No question about it. We'll see how that plays out. There's still a rulemaking process that has to go along. But I guess I just want to take this opportunity to say this bill is about transparency and oversight, right? And so I'm saying, what my testimony says, although I would love to see project labor agreements eliminated, I'm not suggesting that today. I'm saying if this committee is going to take some oversight and add some transparency to this process, I'm saying, please make sure you're considering project labor agreements when you do that, because there hasn't, unfortunately, always been transparency in that process. So we're just, you know, what I'm suggesting today, what I'm advocating for today is that if we're going to do these things, they're highly controversial. I mean, I think at a minimum, we can agree upon that. They are controversial. If you see benefits in them, I understand that. But let's have the opportunity to discuss that openly. You know, this committee and the body is a deliberative one. So you all are, you know, supporters of discussing these things, debating them. So we're just saying, let that opportunity exist for these projects as well.
I hear you, and what I will say to that is the emphasis of this bill is not to allow organization to push, you know, things that would make it harder for workers. And certainly we are looking at reducing uncertainty in the contracting process, and that's why I'm in favor of PLAs. So I push back on you wanting to see them go away, because they actually standardize the work rules, they standardize compensation costs and dispute settlement processes on construction projects. And then the standardization helps to create more certainty for the government and therefore taxpayers, which I think is very important, about the cost and the completion rate for these projects. And I think overall PLAs are the way to go, and we will just have to differ on that. But I do thank you for coming in today. I thank you for expressing your concerns, and we have heard you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Representative Porter. I think our last comment will be coming from Representative Kennedy. Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be quick. Mr. Frixels, thank you so much for your testimony and your written testimony, which I was just looking at. But Madam Chair, more than anything, what I wanted to say is I wanted to thank Representative Porter for asking those important questions, but more importantly, for not interrupting Mr. Frexel and for allowing him to answer the questions before continually being asked another question before he was able to complete any questions that had been asked previously. So I just want to make that point, and I just want to say thank you to Representative Porter for her dialogue with Mr. Frexel. And Mr. Frexel, thanks for being here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. Representative Walker, would you like to say any last words? Representative France, any last? Representative Walker, there you are.
Sorry, I just want to thank everybody for listening, having an open mind, and listening to what we as legislators really are doing and working hard at. And I thank everybody for all their comments and their commitment, and really listening to the information that we are all gathering each day. And so we have not heard the last of this, I know, but I think the most important part is that but I think the most important is the fact that we do our work and we do the research that is necessary to protect the people of Connecticut. So I thank everybody for everything they said and everything they did today. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Walker. Senator Minor.
Thank you, Senator Austin. I too look forward to continuing the dialogue. I think it was very helpful to get the input of the agency heads. And I think it was very helpful to them. I hope it was helpful to them to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. It's important for people to know we're not trying to be obstructionists in the process. We understand the time is of the essence. But as Representative Walker pointed out a number of times, many times there's matching funds required. We have staffing requirements. So I think this was very helpful for us to understand some of those implications as well. And I hope everyone has a good evening.
Thank you, Senator. Representative France. Not certain if you're still on. Representative France. Alrighty, everybody. Taylor, is Sue on at all?
Sue is not on. You have me. Sorry.
No need to be sorry. Do we have anything tomorrow that we have to be prepared for?
We just have a few subcommittee things going on. Hold on. Sorry, my computer's being my computer. Bear with me.
Education, I know.
Yep. So you have education at 2, and that's pretty much it for this committee tomorrow. And then we will continue subcommittee work sessions next week, and then decision making will be the following week.
Alrighty, everybody. Thank you very much for all your help today. It is a Thursday night, although I kept thinking today was Friday. I'm not certain why. So look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and let's get some rest. Everyone have a nice night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.